here's the honest legacy of everybody's ministry. We leave a trail of dumb things that we've said.
Yeah. Just a few.
Regrettable things, things that you think, that was totally unhelpful. And one of the places we do that is when people are suffering or they've experienced a loss, because you feel the need to say something.
Yeah.
You gotta, and it's sort of that desire to have a wrapped bow around life. So, what are those things? Things for you?
Well, I tell people all the time that Job's friends were great counselors until they opened their mouth. I mean, literally, when they showed up on the scene and he was completely disheveled, unrecognizable, they couldn't believe what they saw. So undone he was. And they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and didn't open their mouth. And it's only when they wept with him. It's only when they opened their mouths after 7 days to try to explain why he was going through what he was going through that their 30 some odd chapter dialogue started. The way his friends approached Job was like the worst kind of accountability group. Good people get good stuff, bad people get bad stuff. You're clearly getting bad stuff. What'd you do wrong? Come on, confess your sin. What are the skeletons in your closet? That sort of thing. And they actually perpetuated Job's pain because now he wasn't just dealing with the loss of a family, the loss of wealth, the loss of health, that sort of thing. Now he was also having to deal with his friends' accusations. They actually perpetuated his pain. So, I mean, things that I've said when people have come to me, I wish I could take back now when they tell me something tragic has happened. And you're right, we have this instinctive desire to say something, to fix the problem and to say something. Silence just isn't satisfying, and so we have to say something. Things like, God will use this. Someone comes and tells you they've lost their child. Well, God will use this. How many people? You never know how many people might actually become Christians as a result of your child's death. Stuff like that I know is commonplace inside the church, and you perpetuate people's pain. That's not what they want to hear. They don't want to hear anything. They really don't want to hear anything. In fact, the best thing to say is, I'm sorry, I can't understand. I couldn't even imagine.
Give him a hug. I don't know what God's doing here. Love you, care for you.
And I wouldn't even go, in a sense, I wouldn't even say, I've made the mistake of saying, God's going to do something, or who knows what God is doing. I don't even invoke that. I'm just like, this stinks. Yeah. I mean, in other words, I want to be able to give them permission in a sense. This is tragedy. Yeah. I want to give them permission in a sense to argue with God about what's happened.
Well, the fact of the matter is, in the forever world, this stuff won't happen.
That's right.
Yeah.
So at that level, this is not a good thing. This is a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing that we're in this kind of world. And so things like God's seeking to teach you, make sure you learn your lessons well.
Yeah. Take notes here, get this right.
I'm getting up in the next morning. I'm about to go to the funeral home with a little suit for my 6-year-old son who's died. Now, am I in the car as someone's driving, writing notes of all the things God is trying to teach me through this morning? I mean, the thought of that is just so ridiculous. You think, well, who do we think people are?
Yeah.
I mean, this is you're dealing with this horror at this moment.
Yeah.
That really does push you to the borders of everything you've committed your life to in your faith.
Yeah, that's right.
It just seems like an insanity. And if it weren't for the tragedy of that moment, the things that we say to people are just laughable. They're embarrassing.
I mean, I've from time to time, I've compared someone's injury or someone's loss to somebody else to kind of show them, well, no, what you're going through really isn't that bad. So, you broke a leg, well, at least you're not paralyzed. Or you're paralyzed, at least this hasn't happened. And we try to minimize the pain that they've gone through by encouraging them with somebody else, and it just doesn't work.
Be thankful. You could be dead now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, or even something on a smaller scale. I mean, even
you don't have legs anymore, but you're not dead.
How ridiculous is that?
When I've got 3 children, and when my daughter, who's 11, will come home sometimes and say, I had a really rough day. And without even asking her what made her day rough, or maybe I do ask her what made her day rough.
Not even listening.
And she said, and she's like, well, I got in an argument with, Lily, her friend, or something like that. And, try to give her perspective. Well, honey, at least, look on the bright side. Look at the school you get to go to. Look at how many friends you have. And in that moment, I'm doing exactly what you just said. Minimizing her pain. I'm not hearing her. Yeah. For her, the argument she got in with her friend is a real deal. Yeah. I mean, it's serious. And I think we just, oftentimes, the mandatory happiness that we require inside the church perpetuates pain.
Here's the ultimate minimization. You will never suffer as much as Jesus did.
Yeah. Oh, that's the worst. Yeah. That might be the worst. Yeah. That might be the worst thing to say.
First, it's ridiculously unhelpful. And second,
that's all of us.
It doesn't make me really want to run to him.
Yeah, that's exactly
either,
right.
Because you set the bar so high, no one will ever take my suffering seriously.
Yeah, that's exactly
because
right.
You suffered so much.
Yeah.
I hate the fact that you suffered that much because now my suffering has no meaning.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's
exactly right. No, that's exactly right. It turns people away from Jesus, not toward him.
We need to recognize that people are hurting. Kind of like REM's song, "Everybody Hurts." I mean, everybody's going through something, regardless of on the scale of 1 to 100. What it is they're going through, but we're all suffering and hurting in some way. And I think for us as pastors and church leaders to love and care for those in our flock, and be patient, listen, be quiet, like you mentioned.
And I think that's where your example of your daughter is so important, because that's not small suffering for her.
That's exactly right.
I mean, we tend to categorize suffering.
That's right.
And because it's her big deal.
It
At
is
that
her
point
big
in her
deal.
life,
Yeah.
that's her big deal.
Right. That's right.
And it's as big as some of the things that we would call big for her.
Yeah.
And those answers, they just diminish all that reality. And she has a sense you don't get what she's going through.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
I mean,
which is the exact opposite of Jesus, who, because he was tempted, Hebrews 4, in every way as we are, yet was without sin, is a sympathetic sufferer. I think the idea that God has suffered for us, that God suffers with us, is something that obviously sets Christianity apart from every other world religion. But we have a faith that actually embraces suffering, that looks at suffering square in the face and is realistic about suffering.
That's absolutely true, but the reason we're talking about this is ministry people are uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, that's right.
And so
that's right.
we want to cover it up with something. We want some words that will fix it, because we want to get quickly back to that happiness religion, which is not the gospel.
That's right. Yeah.
The gospel is bloody, brutal, raw. The blood and guts of that are on every page of Scripture.
Yeah.
That is its hope.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Psalm 88 that says, "Darkness is my closest friend," is in the Bible to give you hope.
That's exactly right.
Because God gets it.
Yeah, that's right.
He gets it.
Yeah.
And that's a very different thing than I'm sort of uptight and nervous as your pastor and I want to get you to a better place real quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not my love for you.
Right.
No.
That's because I'm uncomfortable with it.
I want to deal with my schedule.
Yeah.
Good stuff.